पृथिवी शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगं शान्तिर्द्यौ शान्तिर्दिशः शान्तिरवान्तर दिशा शान्तिरग्निः शान्तिर्वायुः शान्तिरादित्यः शान्तिश्चन्द्रमा शान्तिर्नक्षत्राणि शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्तिर्वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्गौः शान्तिरजा शान्तिरश्वः शान्तिः पुरुषः शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्तिर्ब्राह्मणः शान्तिः शान्तिरेव शान्तिः शान्तिर्मे Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet Sarvastaratu Durgani Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, aviravirmayeti, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Our subject today is the Shiva ideal. This is in preparation for the Shiva worship we'll have on upcoming Friday. And many of you who have attended the Shiva worship here in the previous years know that Shiva is a name of a deity. And as with many names of most deities, the literal meaning of the word points to a spiritual ideal or a spiritual reality. In Sanskrit, Shiva means auspicious, means what is good, holy, pure. A deity is a symbol that points to the reality which is beyond. But the deity is not simply a symbol which can be easily replaced with another symbol, because symbols can be changed, symbols can be replaced. But a deity is a special kind of symbol because it's a very powerful symbol. And what gives the deity its power is that the highest reality lies at the heart of a deity. So it's not a symbol that's been conjured up by a committee of people who said, oh, let's make a symbol out of this. So it's not something that has emerged as a result of a discussion or a result of some kind of an intellectual thinking behind it. It's a symbol that somehow seems to have come from a much higher source than merely the intellect. Now, it is the divine reality which every deity represents and embodies that gives that deity the power to bless, the power to shower grace, the power to transform our lives. And many of us know that this is not simply a theoretical representation, because for most of us, from our own personal lives, we know that when we have prayed, and not just to Shiva, to any ideal of the divine in our lives, in whichever symbol that ideal was represented, we have found our prayers answered, we have found somehow in significant ways our lives changed. So that power to change, that power to bestow grace comes from a deeper reality which these deities represent. The phrase occurs most famously in Shankaracharya's hymn called Nirvana Shatkam, which as all of us know, we do it pretty often here. And every verse in that great hymn ends with this refrain, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. What it means is, my nature is pure consciousness and bliss. I am Shiva, I am Shiva. So what does this phrase, I am Shiva, mean? It simply means that my true nature is purity, holiness, auspiciousness. So affirming Shivoham Shivoham is an affirmation of our true divine nature within our hearts. The truth that transcends both form and formlessness seemingly is the key word here, seemingly acquires form and name in order to become more accessible to seekers in their spiritual quest. And we know this, that unless we have some concrete supports, and that concreteness comes through some form to visualize, some form to think about, some name to catch hold of. Otherwise, God can become a very abstract entity. And God, in God's total transcendence, is beyond the grasp of the human mind. So we cannot even then think about it. If we have to, the moment we try to think about God, the moment we try to pray to God, the moment we try to meditate on God, we are already investing the divine with some quality, some form, some name. And there is no harm in doing so, provided we always recognize that the true nature of the reality transcends all of these. Now, if our spiritual practice is not to remain confined to mere talk, and sometimes religion can become that. And we have to be careful to see the moment we try to see ourselves as spiritual seekers, we have to ask ourselves, how much do I talk about spirituality and how much am I living the spiritual life? So if we do not want our spirituality to be reduced to mere talk, or mere just kind of some reading, or some kind of an intellectual stimulation, then we must do something about doing. We must do something about actually putting into practice whatever it is that resonates with our head and heart. A tangible ideal, therefore, helps us in our quest. And with its help, we can find the truth which that ideal represents. And that is why we have, in the Hindu tradition, many iconographic representations of the deity. And not just in Hindu, really. We find it in many Eastern traditions clearly, but even in Western traditions. So we find East or West, whenever human beings have tried to think of God, we needed something, either a mental image or an external image, to be able to even to pursue our thinking process. So the divine presence and the form, the moment we speak about forms, then it's like a whole package that comes in. And we see that in the case of many of the deities in the Vedantic tradition. So there is the appearance, there is the where do these deities live. It's pretty much like when you see a new person and you say, oh, who are you? Where do you live? And where's your family? These are the kind of questions. This is the human way of relating to other people. So when we then try to relate to the divine, a divine who somehow has become more accessible to us, then we tend to ask the kind of questions about these deities that we tend to ask about other human beings. And which is why many of these deities then have specific names. Then there is a lot of mythology has grown around it. They have their family, their specific symbols, some specific paraphernalia that they carry, and there are many stories associated with them also. And all of these are very helpful for a devotee to visualize, to think, to pray. Now, and if you just even you look up some Google pictures, if you like, and just put some Hindu deities, and you will see a big array of very colorful different images. Now, in Shiva, which is what we are trying to reflect on this morning, the iconographic details of Shiva are in some ways a little different from most other deities in the Vedantic tradition. For one thing, we find that Shiva, the way the image of Shiva has come popularly down to us today, we find him wearing not some fine, colorful clothes, but in fact, he's just wearing, oftentimes shown as wearing a tiger skin, or some kind of a just used garment. Among the ornaments that many of these deities generally have, and Shiva has none of these, no gold, no diamond, no precious stones, nothing. Shiva's ornaments are pretty unusual and sometimes even a little bit scary. So instead of a necklace, so he has a
poisonous snake, not just an ordinary snake, poisonous snake. And then among the creatures around him, they're not very benign really. So you have, besides snakes, there are scorpions, there are all kinds of creatures we generally tend to stay away from. Now, many of these deities have what was seen as vahana in Sanskrit, means a vehicle, which took them from one place to another. In the case of Vishnu, for instance, the deity is a golden eagle. It's very majestic. In the case of Durga, goddess, we find it's the lion. In the case of Shiva, we find the vehicle is a bull. And an old bull at that, not even a young, energetic bull, an old bull, which is pretty useless in every sort of way. So it's a very different kind of a iconography we find connected with Shiva compared to other deities. And then, of course, then the question would naturally come up, why is Shiva so different from most other deities in the Vedantic tradition? And the characteristics of Shiva are best understood through a story that many of you may be familiar with, and it's good for us to review that story once again. And it's a story that comes in Indian mythology about the churning of the milk ocean. So it is said that at some point, as mythologies go, so this entire universe had this big ocean of milk. Unfortunately, it's only salt water now, so we need to go and buy milk. It would have been much easier if that milk ocean still existed today. And there was this belief that at the bottom of this ocean were very precious things, extremely precious things. And how do you get it out of the bottom of the ocean? And the only way they could think of in those days was somehow if you could churn this ocean, and as you kind of churn it, then things which are at the bottom will be sucked up, will come up on the surface. Now the ocean was really very big, and churning of this big ocean would need enormous amount of manpower to do it. And so there was this always the forces of good and evil we find represented in many mythologies. So in this mythology, the forces of good are represented by devas, sometimes translated as gods in English, which creates its own problems. They are devas. And the forces of evil are the demons, the rakshasas. So, and of course, all of them, both of them wanted all those precious things which were at the bottom of the ocean. And neither of them had the capacity to do it on their own. And that's what do we do? If you want something and you can make common cause with others if you find that you are not able to get it on your own, even if those others are someone you don't quite agree with. And we find that occurring, all through history. For instance, even during the Second World War, for instance, not everyone in the Allied forces really agreed with everything with one another. But they needed to come together because they had a common cause. Exactly in the same way, here was this common cause. We want those precious things. And let's come together and let's start churning the ocean. And there are lots of interesting details. We need not go into that because that's not directly related to it. For instance, one detail was, you need a churning rod. And in mythology, there was the highest mountain peak was a mountain peak called Mount Meru. So they decided to have that peak as the churning rod. And then you needed a rope to churn it. And then there was this mythical serpent, just really huge and big, which was used as a rope. And these devas, who were supposed to be forces of good, but they're also more intelligent, or at least they often thought they were more intelligent. And so they said they will be on the side of the serpent's tail, because the face would emit all the poison. So they thought it will be safer to be holding the tail side of it. and then the forces of evil were on the holding the face. Anyway, so the churning started. And as the churning started, wonderful, precious things started coming up from them. And among the things that came up from the bottom of the ocean was the wish-fulfilling tree. That the celebration we have on the 1st of January every year. So that wish-fulfilling tree, which is then now supposed to be in some mythical heaven, really came out from the bottom of the ocean. And then there was also Kamadhenu was called. There's a cow which could also give you or fulfill all your desire. So wonderful things came, a lot of precious stones, and the idea was whichever of these things came up, it was free for all. As soon as they came up, they let go of that churning rod for a while and pounced on it, and whoever got whatever they got. What they were really after was, these were precious things, okay, and they were good, but there was something more. The most precious in that ocean was as a pitcher filled with amrita, nectar. And the idea was that whoever drinks that would become immortal. Now that's what everyone was really after. And so the others, they didn't care. But the agreement was, when that container having that nectar comes up, the two are going to share it equally. Because, well, who doesn't want to be immortal? So that's what they were waiting for. And so then the story goes on to say, things were coming up and people were just grabbing what they could. What they didn't know, and what they had not planned for, was after a while, before that container filled with that amrita was supposed to come up, suddenly the whole ocean started turning very dark. A kind of extremely virulent kind of a poison started coming up from it. And they had no idea that was there. And they didn't know how to deal with it. And that poison was so deadly that it had the capacity to consume the entire universe. And they were terrified. They really didn't know what to do. And the story goes on to say that all the citizens of heaven or the celestial worlds were present, because the wonderful things were there. The only one person who had not joined this rat race to get what they want was Shiva. He was just sitting quietly meditating on the Mount Kailas. So when this poison came up, this is interesting. When this poison came up, the first person they said, we can't deal with it. The only person who could do something about it is Shiva. And of course they knew he would never turn up for these things. And so all of them then rushed to where Shiva was living. And then said, trouble, please come and help. And Shiva just opens his eyes. He takes a look at that poison. And he just takes that entire poison that was coming up into the palm of his hand and then just drinks it. That poison, which had the capacity to consume the entire universe, he was just able to just drink that poison. But such was the power of that poison that it could have even hurt him. But he had that great yogic power. He just took it in and made it and stopped it here. He didn't allow it to go further down. And the power of that poison, the intensity of that poison, turned Shiva's throat into blue in color. And therefore one of Shiva's name then became Nilakantha, meaning the blue-throated one. And of course, once the ocean became free from it, and then these people again resumed churning, and then the story goes on to say what happened with that nectar. But that story, we'll just leave the story like, if you don't know the story, it's kind of a cliffhanger. It's like, what happened afterwards? But that's, we can deal with it on some other occasion. So Shiva does this, and then he again goes back and enters into meditation. So what does this story teach us? Even though we have seen only a part of the story, up to this point, what do we learn from this story? Because all of these, for a long time people had dismissed these stories and mythology as well. It's interesting stories, good to tell our children and grandchildren, but not much to be taken seriously, these things. But in fact, no. And especially in the times in which we live, in more recent years, Joseph Campbell and others who have done a lot of work on mythology. So today, people are hesitant to dismiss mythology as just stories. They know that these stories have something deep to teach us. There is a lot we can learn. These stories have the power to transform our lives. So then we look deeply at this story and then ask, what does it teach me? It teaches us that there is this deep ocean within our own heart. And when we begin to churn the ocean of our mind, that's what sometimes looking deeply within oneself means. One of the reasons introspection or looking deep within our own hearts is a painful exercise, because there are many things hidden within our own mind. Some of them are wonderful things. And to discover those great things is a great joy. Sometimes we try to think about our childhood, etc. And then some wonderful memories come. And it's such a joy because maybe we haven't thought about those things consciously for a long time. And suddenly you remember, oh, that was such a great time. So there are these great, pleasant, joyful, life-giving stuff within our own hearts. But also, alongside that, what gets described in the story as poison would be these very painful memories of the past that can also come. And they can be as terrifying, as stressful, as frightening as the poison that came up on the ocean. And what we need to do is the more we are able to develop within us somehow the characteristics of Shiva, the more the Shiva ideal becomes our own ideal, the more Shiva doesn't remain simply a figure that we worship and adore, but somehow becomes more real in our own heart, then we acquire that capacity to drink that poison which is in our own heart and digest it and not allow it to consume us. Because sometimes these dark things in our own heart can consume us. It can take away all joy out of our life. It can snuff all meaning from our life. Only to the extent we are able to become a little bit like Shiva, we'll be able to consume that poison and not allow it to affect us the way it did not affect Shiva. So what are the kind of qualities we need to cultivate in order to become like Shiva? So what are the dominant characteristics of Shiva? Well, one thing we saw is indifference to everything that almost everyone holds dear. I said that everyone was there at the churning of the ocean. Shiva was the only one who didn't go. What it means is this results from having discernment, looking deeply and seeing that what seems valuable at first sight may not really be so. It helps us to reassess our priorities in life. Because sometimes we might find ourselves doing things just because everyone is doing it. But sometimes it's good to pause and say, why is this thing valuable to me? Is this valuable to me just because it is valuable to everyone? Or does it hold any value to me? And we might discover, we probably will discover, that many of the things that are so high on our list have been just there. It's a little bit like sometimes you will see like sometimes you make a to-do list, like these are the things I need to do. And as with most to-do lists, most of the things we don't end up doing. But sometimes you will see that after a while has passed and you have not done what you should have done, you find that, well, nothing much has changed. Even if I had not done it, even if that thing had never been on my list, life would have been just fine. it's also the same thing is with regard to most of the emails you get also. Sometimes you see it's so stressful to have this in your inbox of 50, 60 emails. And if you are lethargic, say, oh, you cannot postpone writing it and just keeps on weighing on your mind. And then one day after a month or two, you say, let me take a look at all these emails in my inbox. And you will find that most of those emails could have been safely deleted the day they came. But you somehow thought, oh, let me respond. And then after some time, usually after 15, 20, 1 month or so, you find, what's the point in replying now? And then you just delete it anyway. You could have deleted it as soon as it came. What it means is the things which look important may not be really so important. And to some extent we all see that we are so reactive most of the time that many things which might seem earth-shattering now, after 6 months or even earlier, you look at those things and just kind of laugh it off. So my point is only this: if I'm going to laugh it off after 6 months, why can I not laugh it off right now? But most things in life are like that. And so that's what we see in Shiva. That he didn't go run after those things because he saw that precious as those things may be, from a higher perspective, that value is nothing. There is something even more precious than all of those things. So that's the first characteristic. Looking deeply, we'll be able to reassess our priorities and find that what's dear to everyone doesn't have to be necessarily dear to me. The second quality we see is Shiva's willingness to accept what is rejected by all. You see, no one wanted poison. None of them came and offered the wonderful things they had found in the ocean to Shiva and said, please take this. All they want are like, this poison. Could you please take it? You see that in Shiva's image as well. As I said, all of the creatures that are around Shiva are not something welcomed by most people anyway. A poisonous snake, a scorpion, and then the companions of Shiva that are often described in books are all these kind of half crazy lunatics, like people who are rejected, socially rejected. And you find Shiva says, if no one wants you, come to me. And so that's Shiva mythology. That's why I say it's very different from other deities. In fact, I remember way back, I probably was just 11 or 12 years old, I guess. There's an essay, Sister Nivedita, Margaret Noble, she wrote about Shiva. And this is in fact, whatever I'm telling you now, most of it description I found first when I was very young. And that thing impressed me so much that she kind of emphasized that Shiva is one place you will never be rejected. Other places may ask for your qualification and you should do this and you should do that, but you go to Shiva and Shiva will accept you. I was just 11 or 12 years old and I was like, that's one place I can go to. It's very empowering in many ways. And one of the names of Shiva in Sanskrit is called Ashutosh. Ashu means quickly, and Tosha means happy. One who becomes happy very quickly. And so there are many stories about Shiva. So, a willingness to accept what is rejected by all. Now, this results from a true love, empathy, compassion. So, seeing what the Upanishads describe as seeing one's self in others and others' self in oneself. That beginning with the intellectual conviction, but later a direct experience of oneness, then will make it very easy, in fact natural, inevitable, that we will not reject anyone and anything. And finally, readiness to sacrifice and be of service to others. So this is a direct result of love, true love and true wisdom. In fact, these are the two qualities that the Buddha emphasized. We find in Buddha's discourses that the terms were karuna and prajna. Karuna is true compassion and love, and prajna, wisdom, the ability to see deeply and see reality as it is. And that is why sacrifice is we see that so clearly embodied in the life of the Buddha. Now, all the stories, we don't have clearly time, it's not even necessary right now, but all the stories associated with Shiva, you find manifesting all of these three qualities get highlighted in all of them. Now, Shiva worship, which we will do this Friday, it presupposes three things. First, conviction that the characteristics of Shiva are virtues worth striving for in life. So who will want to pray to Shiva? Who will want to worship Shiva? Why is Shiva worth praying to or worth receiving our worship? What are necessary? What is necessary in order what is necessary in order for this to happen? Clearly, only when we feel that these qualities that I just enumerated are worth striving for, that these are the qualities I would want to have in my own life. The second thing necessary is the faith that pleased by our worship, Shiva will grant us the strength to acquire these virtues. So there is the faith that these are the virtues I would like to have, and I have the faith that here is this ideal, the divine ideal manifesting in this way will grant me the ability to acquire these virtues. And finally, that realization that Shiva is a part of daily life, not just on Shivratri day once a year. That clearly we do Shiva worship, this big Shiva worship only once a year. But it's not as if it's only on this particular day that these qualities we need to strive for. So the third important thing is to recognize that the ideal that Shiva represents, it's worth striving for every day of our life, not just once a year. The question is, can Shiva's characteristics become my own characteristics? And the answer is yes. In fact, according to Vedanta, they are already my own. I just have to manifest them by removing all the hurdles, the obstacles which prevent them from expressing themselves in my life. In other words, I must be my true self. And as we come to this theme again and again, my true self, who I am really, is the spirit, pure, free, blessed, eternal. So constant self-reminder, because the thing is this, although we are told again and again and again, infinite number of times, you are divine, you are not just a mortal human being, you are in fact divine, how easy it is to forget it. And so if we become forgetful of something, the only way to solve that problem is to remind ourselves of it as often as we can. There is no other way. And we can use whatever strategies are effective in reminding us of the things that we tend to forget in life. And so if I have to remember that really I'm not just this perishable entity just with flesh, blood, bones and stuff like that, which is just going to disappear after a few years. There is something deeper within me. And if it's something that I tend to forget, I need to remind myself of it as often as I can. The worship that we do here is a very non-dualistic worship, although it just seems dual. Externally, again, if we don't look deeply, all worship looks dualistic. Clearly, there is a deity on the altar, and there are all these offerings being made. So it's very easy to mistake this practice as a very dualistic thing. But all the worship that we do at the Vedanta Society is non-dualistic, in the sense that whenever any worship that is done, we're really worshipping our own externalized divine nature, externalized Shiva nature, for instance, in Shiva worship. That this is really my own nature. Right now, I do not have the capacity to worship spirit as spirit. Right now, I need some material support in order to focus my mind, to raise my mind at that level. And therefore, that reality which is in my own heart, I'm externalizing it in the form of an image or a picture or a symbol, and then pouring all my love to that. All the time recognizing that is really my true nature. And so the worship that we do, in the beginning, the deity who really resides in the heart of all of us is externalized, worshipped, and then at the end of the worship is invited back to where the deity belongs. And all worship ends with actually seeking. There is a Sanskrit verse which actually seeks forgiveness for ascribing form to one who is really beyond form, one who is beyond even the idea of formlessness, ascribing name to who is really beyond all name. So all of the worship that is done with the recognition that this is not the perfect way to deal with the divine, but this is the way that makes sense to me right now. And as I evolve, as long as my own form and name is real to me, it doesn't make sense to say all other forms are unreal if my own form is real. When I'm able to outgrow my own form, my own name, my own personality, then we will be able to outgrow the names, forms, and personalities associated with all of these deities. Until that time, we just have to do the best we can. We just have to take the next step in our own evolution. There is a verse which Shankaracharya wrote. It's a part of a larger hymn. And this is how it goes. This is also something that I often chant during worship. This is how it goes in Sanskrit. Atmatvam girijamati sahachara prana shariram griham pujate vishayopabhoga rachana nidra samadhi sthitihi sancharav padayo pradakshina vidhi stotrani sarva giro yadyat karma karomi tattadakhilam shambho tavaradhanam. What this means is this. O Shiva, you are my true self. The Divine Mother is my mind. My senses are your attendants, and this my body is your home. All these sense contacts are parts of your worship. My sleep is like remaining in samadhi. Wherever I go, I'm just going around you. All the words that I speak are hymns to you, and all forms of activity I engage myself in, O Shiva, or your worship. So that's what I meant by saying that our worship is not to be limited to just once in a year or only what we do inside a temple. Every little thing that we do, every word that we speak, every thought that we think can be done out of love for God. There is that little book many of you may have heard of or seen or read, The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. It conveys the same idea of how it doesn't really matter what I'm doing, provided, of course, it's ethical and moral and good. What kind of activity I'm engaged in. And as I said, with that caveat that it has to be something moral and ethical, really doesn't matter. It's possible to be in touch with the divine by doing some very profound work which is highly regarded in society, or even doing some minor little work which people may not even notice. Through every one of these things, it's possible to acquire that Shiva nature. There is this one little incident that occurred at the time of Holy Mother Sharda Devi. So once she visited Belur Math, the headquarters of the order. It was just in the early years when the order had begun, and it was still small, and some young men who had joined the order as monks, and they were novices, and one of the things that many of the novices had to do in the early days, and they still have to do in many of our monasteries, was early morning go and help in cooking, in cutting vegetables. Now, most of us here in the Western world do our own cooking, and there in some ways the dignity of labor has a much greater recognition in the Western world than in many Eastern societies. And in the East, and in India especially, so cooking, well, you could hire a cook. Some paid staff could do it. It was not considered something that requires a lot of brains, which I seriously would disagree with that. But that was how many of the societies see it. And so anyway, so here were these young men. Many of them were university graduates, educated, professionals, and they had just joined the order. They were novices, and they were this cutting vegetables. And Holy Mother came by, and then Swami Premananda, a great disciple of Ramakrishna, he jokingly told Mother, "See, Mother, these young men were so highly educated, they have come, and look at what they are doing. All they are doing is sitting here in this room and cutting vegetables." And Mother smiled and blessed them all. And then one of those novices, he then said something which Mother was very pleased with that answer. And then he said, "The goal of our life is to please the Divine Mother. And if the Divine Mother can be pleased by just cutting vegetables, that's fine. If the Divine Mother is pleased by writing a book or giving lectures or going and erecting a huge building, it just doesn't matter how you please the Divine Mother." That is the goal, and Mother was very pleased with that answer. That novice, by the way, who later became one of the great monks of the order, his name was Swami Tyagananda, and he was the one who translated Swami Sharadananda's Leela Prasanga into that book called the Ramakrishna, the Great Master. Became a very great scholar. So anyhow, I mentioned this to show that the dignity of labor, it's not what you do, it's not how much your work is appreciated by others or how much it is recognized by others. Although many of us in our weak moments might feel about, oh, there is no recognition, there is no appreciation. But what a devotee sees is that all that I want is not recognition by other human beings. It's just Shiva knows everything. The Divine Mother knows everything. Every little thing that I do is seen. We are never really alone. People are so worried about and justifiably so about privacy nowadays, about the big brother. How much can the government, how much will they enter into your private lives? Can they ask you to unlock your phones at the border? And so on. These are issues. For a spiritual seeker, though, your phone is always unlocked before the Lord. You cannot keep your passcode and password hidden from the Lord. And so there is already this real divine big brother watching. Now, most people don't remember it, and they just kind of in bliss. But if we truly believe God exists, and if God is everywhere, if God is omnipresent, then God is watching me every moment of my life. I realize it's not a very comforting thought, but that's just how it is. It might seem a little not very comforting, as I said, but the more we kind of dwell on that idea, we will see that there can be nothing more reassuring in life. There can be nothing which can bring us greater confidence. We will never be alone in life. Whenever we feel I'm lonely, I'm alone, we have forgotten that there is God around us. All fear will go. All stress, all anxiety will go. Swami Ramakrishna, the great disciple of Ramakrishna, once said that the presence of stress and anxiety in our life is that our faith in God hasn't become strong yet. And so awareness of the divine presence will always fill our life with just joy all the time. As we see in the lives of all of these great ones, all of those whom we worship today as prophets, incarnation saviors, there is this just the joy and the contentment and freedom, and all of that can become ours. And these are the ideals that Shiva stands for. And so this verse that I chanted from Shankaracharya life kind of stresses that. that worship is not to be limited to just once a year or to a specific days or only a specific place. That it's possible for us to be aware of the divine, to adore the divine, to do everything out of love for the divine every moment of our lives. And so worshipping inside a temple should be as meaningful and as joyful as seeing the presence of God everywhere else. You find a homeless person, you find a hungry person. When you feed the hungry, when you help the needy, if I can truly believe that in so doing, it's not me who is doing it, it's the Shiva nature within me which is making me do it, then Shiva becomes more real in our lives. Now, all of these ideas are important. So I would encourage you in the days ahead, we have 4 or 5 days, so the worship is on Friday, to, if you get a chance, try to dwell on these ideas a little bit more and see. And I'm sure that many more ideas will come to you. If it's possible for you to do some reading before that, do so by all means. The more we are ready, the more we prepare ourselves for the Shiva worship on Friday, you will see that if you come for that puja in the evening, and if you have done a little bit of thinking along this, a little bit of praying, a little bit of reflecting on these ideas, that worship will become a lot more meaningful. That will have a lot more transformative effect. Well, you will find out for yourself. Let's try to do it. And again, although the focus today was on Shiva worship, this really applies to all worship. Just 2 days after that, on Sunday, we'll have worship of Ramakrishna. And everything that I said with regard to Shiva, we can apply the same way of thinking, even when we think about Ramakrishna's life. Most of us here are familiar with his life. We have read things about, we know incidents from his life. So the more, again, when we reflect on those ideals, it's not possible and not even necessary to reflect on every little incident or every little idea. But even those things in the life of these great ones which somehow touch our heart, just kind of dwell on it, and then you be present at that puja, at that worship, you will find that it will be a more meaningful experience, a more powerful experience. And that is what these pujas that we have are expected to do. The pujas are as powerful, probably more powerful than the lectures and classes that we have. And so as we prepare for these 2 pujas coming this week, let's try to keep some of these ideas in the mind. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu. So, as I just said, next Sunday we will have worship of Sri Ramakrishna, and as we do every year, the worship will begin at 10:30 in the morning. There will be music, there will be flower offering besides puja, and then there will be prasad. So you are welcome. Next Sunday morning at 10:30 will be Ramakrishna puja. 2 days before that, on Friday, we will have a Shivaratri. Ratri means night. Now, traditionally, in many places in India, that puja goes through whole night. You are safe. We are not doing that here. So Friday we will begin the puja at 6:30, and approximately, I can't say the exact time, approximately it should probably be over by around 9:30. So 6:30 to 9:30 on Friday, that's in the evening. One other thing about Shiva worship, again, many of you who have come here previously know, it's just like Shiva's iconography is different. The puja also is a little bit different from others. So what we have really are 4 small pujas. So because the original pujas stretches through the whole night, so they have these 2-hour slots. So in many of our centers in India, there is the first watch of the night, 8 to 10, then 10 to 12, 12 to 2, 2 to 4, and after 4, then they'll have a fire worship, the Homa. So the puja really ends at 5:30 in the morning. We are not doing that, as I said, but we'll still have these 4 watches of worship, a little bit condensed. And at the end of every watch of the worship, Shiva is bathed with, in this order, we'll have milk, ghee, honey, and then, what else? What did I skip? Yogurt. Yes, thank you. Now, making that offering on the Shiva's image is a very auspicious thing. It's a great privilege to be able to do so. But that can be done only by those who have observed fast. So if you would like to participate in that, all that it needs is that from the time you wake up on Friday morning until the puja is over, you can have liquids and fruits in moderate quantities. So if you skip your usual meal and just be with liquids and fruit, you will be able to participate in all of those 4 watches of worship. But even if, for whatever reason, if you're not able to do it, you're still welcome for the puja, because the flower offering can be done by everyone. Even if you have not observed a fast, you will be able to do flower offering. So everyone is welcome for the puja on Friday evening. Now, because there is a puja also on Sunday, we will not have the Arati and meditation on Saturday next. But this Tuesday, we will have the Arati meditation as usual. And on Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita at 7:30 in the morning. I'm sorry. 7:30 in the evening. Thank you. Yeah. Let's do the prayer now on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.